Yes, Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And so I've been here for a while. I've lived a couple of other places, but Boston is my home. It's been my home. This is where I was born. Even though my grandparents are Southerners, Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, and my father was from, well, he lived in Philadelphia. He was born in Pittsburgh. And then my mother is a Boston connection with 16 brothers and sisters, so within 19 in the family.
Wow.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
And so I was out there. Why am I running is what people usually say. So I was out there gathering signatures with Domingo Starosa, who's running for mayor, who's on the ballot to be mayor. And this is the second time I've worked in his campaign. So we were out in West Roxbury getting signatures. And he said, you know, sis, it's not really democracy if there's only one person on the ballot. Which is true. There's no competition. And at that time, Enrique Pepin, who is the current city council, nobody was really on the ballot at that point because we were still getting signatures. But he's the incumbent. So the assumption is you're going to be in the ballot unless you resign or something happens, right? So that was a Sunday morning early. I went to the 12:30 service at Jubilee. And the message was about Esther being born for such a time as this. And I said, out of all the messages you could have said today, it was that one? Really? And I went and I talked to my daughter. I said, baby, what do you think about me doing this? And because if I do this, then we're family and you're here and it's going to involve you. And I don't want just to throw you in there and you don't know anything about it and you're close to me. You're my daughter, your family. And she was like, Mommy, I love this for you. This is what you do. So a few more people will be calling our house for help. What's the big deal? Go do it. So I went down Monday and I pulled nomination papers and then I went on Facebook and said I was thinking about being District 5 city councilor. And I got like 240 hits along with our sister Ibina from Australia. and a brother of mine, Horace Smalls, in Paris. And he was like, where do I send the check? I was like, whoa, okay. Yes. Then my former students and people that knew me. So depending if you know me as Sister Hinton or Sharon Hinton or Professor Hinton or Sharon Eaton, which is my maiden name, or Sister Living Proof, which is my name when I was on the radio, or Shasha, when I wasn't saved and I was on another radio station, depending on where you know me. Mm-hmm. You know me by different things. Now that I'm running for city councilor, people are starting to connect the dots. Oh, you were that sister that was always testifying for the Boston School Committee. Oh, you were that sister, or you were my professor, or you were my sister in Christ, or you were a member at Grace Community Church, or you were a member at New Covenant, which is now Jubilee, or you were a member of Good Shepherd Church of God in Christ, which is Bishop Hogan, the first church I went to when I got saved at 23. So why am I doing this? Because there needs to be an independent voice who's unafraid, who stands up for Black people, brown people, who stands up for women, who stands up for mothers, who stands up for seniors, who stands up for people who have disabilities or differently abled, as my friends say, who have the lived experience and who have the knowledge that knowing when God is for you, who can be against you? Mm-hmm. Greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. In this particular time, we need someone who's going to tell the truth unapologetically and stand up for our people, the people that built this country, so that everybody else who's coming to this country needs to know who we are. Now, I don't have any problem with people coming here. This is the land of the free, home of the brave, allegedly. And so I understand when your country's in strife, when you're going through economic problems, sac passe, nabule. I know the history of Haiti and the fact that it was the first free Black country in the Western Hemisphere. I know why it's still broke and it's so poor, because of what they did. And when I say did, the European powers that formed an embargo, including the United States, around this island, so that these free Black people had to pay reparations for them being free because they were viewed as property. And up until recently, the Haitian people were paying reparations to France because they were property. And it's like, oh, so you freed yourself, so you need to pay us for what we lost. And that's twisted. Most people don't know that. Haitian people know that, which is why they celebrate. And Boston has the third largest population of Haitians in this country. And so they absolutely should be here, especially when this country helped to make them so poor. They absolutely should be here. When you've got, the Ellis Island and you've got the Statue of Liberty saying, send us your poor, send it, yearning to be free. Absolutely. How you get here is the immigration issue, right? How you stay here is another issue, which is huge when people are getting snatched off the street. But I speak a little Spanish. I speak a little French. And I have one of these racially ambiguous faces. My daughter said when I squint into the sun, Mommy, you may be able to get the Asian vote. My daughter out there, and people automatically come up and speak Spanish, automatically speak Cape Verdean Creole, automatically speak or Arabic. And that's how they see me, but I'm a Black American, unapologetically. I'm from this country. I'm from this land. And my people are the people who believe in God. My people are all human beings. And if you want to be here and you want to come together, that's my slogan, neighbor to neighbor together. Whether you're in Roslindale, Hyde Park, Reedville, or Mattapan, we've all got some issues that are common to each one of those places. Affordable housing. Boston is the 5th most expensive city in the world. And it always comes up as top 5 in the country as being the most expensive city. We have the most hospitals and universities per square mile than any place in the world. Boston is world class, but it's not acting world class because it has this dark reputation of being one of the most racist cities in the world too. Let's be real. So when we love the neighborhoods, which are beautiful, you go to South Boston, it's a different flavor. You go to North End, it's another flavor. It's sort of like a small New York City. We've got the small boroughs and small neighborhoods, but everyone's dealing with gentrification. Everyone's dealing with transportation issues. Everybody's dealing with getting older, and where's the money coming from? There's an oligarchy that is running this country that doesn't care about anybody, whether you're black, gay, straight, slip, sliding, flying, and gliding. If you don't have any money, they're not listening. And I unapologetically will speak the truth. You may not always like it, but I ain't gonna lie to you because I'm too lazy. Because you're gonna get busted. So your lie will be exposed. Then you gotta tell another one to cover it. That's too much work. I'm gonna tell you how I feel. You may not agree, but I'll listen and we'll discuss it. Maybe we'll come up with something better. Anybody who's ever been on a sporting team or a choir, you want the best. You want the best alto, the best soprano, the best tenor, the best bass. But that song, that harmony, always is bigger than the one person. I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I'm not Jesus. I want everybody to be saved, but I know they're not gonna be, you know. But you want the best. And when you look at the different neighborhoods, there are major differences. Look at Mattapan, which is a major gateway to the city, but people pass through it. Why is that money being spent in Mattapan? And you look at the storefronts, then you look at Rosendale, then you look at all the squares, and then you look at the policies that are being swept across the city as if we're all the same. We're not all the same. But I love the fact that we're not all the same. I love my people, and I want the best for my people. And my idea of empowering people, especially young people, and passing down what, this intergenerational, before we lose people, more people like Mel King and people that actually help to be leaders and show us the way, is that elders and young people, we've got something to share. The young people haven't been here long enough to know what it used to be or what it could be. But the young people haven't been here so long that they stopped dreaming about what it could be. So they can learn from us and we can learn from them. And I want to be that bridge between all of the neighborhoods and all of the people in the neighborhood. So we all want the best life. Life is too short. If you live long enough, you know it's too short. I mean, I think about how old I am. I'm 70. And people look at me and they're like, no way. I said, that's right. Black don't crack. And it doesn't wrinkle too quickly either. But I want to show young women, this is what a black woman looks like. We don't look like what we've been through. And you've got to know, if you are blessed to live this long, there's a lot more that you can give. You've got some wisdom. You've got some years that you can pass down. Now, some of these, I'll tell you a funny story. This woman who I know, how I won't name, had this secret, I'll say Auntie Betty because I can't remember her aunt's name. I've got these biscuits. I gave her a ride home. I've got these biscuits that I made it from Auntie Betty's recipe. They're so good, blah, blah, blah. Now, my grandmother could cook. She was from Mobile. She had biscuits that would melt in your mouth without the butter. So I'm thinking about that because I was hungry. Those biscuits weren't that. She could keep that secret recipe a secret. So some things older folks don't need to pass down because it needs to be new. It needs to be renovated. But we need to be open. But there's some things that we know so that people don't have to make the same mistake again. They don't have to reinvent the hammer. When we come together, we're stronger. You've got the width and the breadth of the perspective of people that have been here and people that are just coming here. So I want to bring people together. And at this particular point in my life, it was God is not a God of coincidence. He's a God of purpose. There's a reason why. I've heard Esther plenty of times, but why that day? Being born at such a time as this and being prepared. So I look at all the things I've gone through as a time of preparation to be able to stand up for my people.
Outstanding, outstanding. So with that said, I know, some of the very specific things, as you said, that are some of the issues that. Now you're specifically going for District 5, and for
Yeah.
those who don't know, you talked about some of the areas that make up District 5.
Mattapan, Reedville, Hyde Park, and Rosendale. Part of Mattapan is District 5. Part of Mattapan is also District 4, which is Bryan Worrell. Part of Rosendale. And then the other part, it's really weird every 10 years how they redistrict things. And there was a major controversy. I mean, ideally, so there is some pretty deep slavery, kind of racist roots in terms of redistricting. Ideally, it's supposed to be so you have a balance of power in between different demographics, but that's not always how it plays out.
No. So with D5, and now again, so there, for folks who don't know, so there are 13 city councils, 4 at large,
Right.
and
9.
9, thank you. Like what's the math there, right? 9 district city councilors, right? So but across the city, as you said, right, this gentrification, that's the thing that spans right across it.
Affordable housing or lack of affordable housing, lack of housing, period.
Yeah.
You need 400 right now. You need 400,000 units of housing across Massachusetts. That's a lot.
So what's some of your position with regard to how to address the housing crisis here in the city of Boston?
Wow. How much time do we have?
Right.
Yeah. So there's one of the things that I bring, I believe, to this discussion is the issues. I'm not running against anyone. And I actually I met Enrique, and I knew Enrique as a neighborhood services guy before. And then the day after he won, I was going to see a friend of mine who's a school teacher at the Buttery in the South End. And we were downstairs, this really nice place. Had a fireplace and the whole thing. So on my way downstairs, the room upstairs had Ruth Lee Louisienne, who's an at-large city councilor, and she's also the president of the city council right now. Ben Weber, Henry Santana, and Enrique Pepin. And those 3 were newly elected, and they're all district, right? Except, no, Henry Santana is at-large. So there were 2 at-large, Ruthie and Henry. And then 2 district, Ben Weber and Enrique Pepin. And so I'd seen him. So I said, oh, there's a bunch of winners here. It was literally the day after the election. Who's got a selfie? Who's got a camera? Let me take a picture of the winners. I like winning. So I'd seen him then. Then I'd seen him a couple of times in the neighborhood. But when I saw him, when we were putting in our signatures at City Hall, I said, and I spoke to him and we spoke to each other. And I said, I prayed about this before I decided to run. And I prayed for you too. And he said, you did? What did you pray? I said, yeah. I prayed that God would give you a bigger position and elevate you with more money so you could step aside and then open up the position for me. And since you want to do the best for the neighbors, for the residents, and I want to do the best, then we could team up and we could work together. So we started laughing, right? So in terms of housing, historically, Boston has always been problematic, especially when you're talking about Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. At one point, and you have the history of redlining, where banks didn't want to, and insurance companies didn't want to invest if you were black. And then there was also issues of deeds. People think this only happened down south, but it didn't. It's illegal, but on people's deeds, they would say you could only sell it, you can't sell it to a Negro, because we weren't always black. We were Negro, we were colored. That's still there. And I ran up against that when I was buying my house in Hyde Park. So you have to deal with problems that have been around for hundreds of years, and the position of city council is 2. So you can affect where the budget goes. You can affect proposing state legislation in terms of affordable housing. Right now there's an issue about rent control, and the 2 mayoral candidates have their own ideas of, yes, should we have rent control again? Should we not have rent control? That was even debated before I came here today. Not that particular issue, but around equity in housing. Today at City Council. There's a lot of edicts and ordinances and all this stuff that you can do. 2 years, you can put forward the issue. You can put forward or push back according to what the residents want. Everybody wants more affordable housing. It's ridiculously high. But there's certain issues, and so before the city council, before the mayor, right now is what to do with vacant buildings. The mayor had proposed, Mayor Wu had proposed to take vacant property and give it to developers so they could develop affordable housing. That land was taken from black and brown people, and you didn't give them the opportunity to either retain that property or to regain that property. So that's problematic for me. I would look at, and most of those properties in black areas, by the way, they were taken from eminent domain. They were taken for taxes. In Mattapan, the majority of the buildings are still owned by Jewish owners. They're not owned by people who live there. In Roxbury, it was the same thing when I was growing up in Roxbury. If people are old enough to remember the riots, and people would put on the window black owned so that they wouldn't get burned down. There were vacant properties because it was either, you can go in any place else in this country and you don't see like Watts or Detroit. You don't see vacant lots like you see in Boston. And you can look at where it was never developed or was abandoned by absentee landlords. That's a problem that's been there for decades. How do you change that? I would change the policy in terms of how you depose, how long you let land stay there. A whole issue about absentee landlords that are only taking out of the community and not giving back. There are people that are sitting on property, don't care about the taxes, which means those property taxes that actually fund schools and services are not being paid. So you've got two different sources of places that are not feeding into the system. You've got pilot programs, payment in lieu of taxes. Now remember, I said that there's more colleges and universities and hospitals than any place else in the world. They don't pay taxes. And a lot of them owe money. And they've got huge endowments. Harvard. They've got huge endowments. So why aren't you paying that money? So their thing is we're giving community benefits. There needs to be an audit of whether or not that's really happening. And at what level is that, is that level of community benefits comparative to the taxes that you would need to pay into the system? So that's one thing I would do. The other thing I would do is look at all the land that's abandoned. And you really need to do a study about, are you just going to make this housing? Because I remember being able to go down to Blue Hill Avenue and get everything I wanted. There were movie theaters, there were bakeries, there were fish stores, there were meat stores, there were restaurants. In Mattapan, there is really no nice place to go, a restaurant where you could sit down with your family. There isn't. And there used to be, right? So when you look at, and so you can kind of see it in Rosendale because Rosendale Square is up and coming. But then there's an issue with the businesses with this squares and streets thing where they're taking away the parking. So if you've got a business in Rosendale, then where do your customers park? And if your customers come there and park and they get tickets, they get towed, they're not going to be coming to your business. Then you've got an issue with the gentrification. The cost of housing is going up because it just costs more money to build it. That's going to get passed down to the people that live there. So the black people, black Americans, black people are the only demographic that's reduced by almost 40,000 people rather, over the last 10 years. Everybody else is coming in. So we're getting pushed out to Randolph, Stoughton, Brockton, Rhode Island. So then you're destroying communities. You're destroying the fabric of communities. If you go into South Boston, Southie, it's Irish, working class. You go in there now, where are they? You're destroying you're destroying the culture of the place that you claimed you moved into there for. I lived in the South End. The South End had everybody in it. But I also remember pockets of the South End that had dope dealing, that had prostitution. Now you can't get in there unless you've got at least $1.5 million. And I remember what they did to push us out. So there has to be policies that, and that's being discussed right now, that fight displacement. There has to be policies in place, and the city council can do that, that fights what it takes to stabilize somebody. Right now, the federal government is talking about eliminating Section 8, and the state, anticipating this loss of funds, has stopped accepting applications of Section 8. But there's been people on Section 8 for 15 years. They can't even get it. And so when people give up their Section 8, they're not even replacing those people. So there's policies all the way through. When you're talking about protecting families, seniors in Hyde Park, there's at least 60% of the homeowners are seniors. And they don't want to necessarily go to a home or assisted living, they want to stay what they know. There's a familiar place. Your neighborhood is there. It's very important for you to have family and your neighborhood around you for your mental and emotional health, especially when you need people to lean on. You need people who know you, who haven't seen you. What happened to Mrs. So-and-so? Is she in there knocking on your door? Are you okay? And checking on you, especially, now when we have snow, you've got all these seasons where you need somebody just to clean your yard or to rake, your yard, or shovel the snow and stuff. So there's services that need to be in place. So I would put in an audit for all of the services that the city of Boston has, and they have a lot, and see how effective they are. Yeah, you've got senior services, but how many people do you serve? And what kind of services? And are those the services that are really needed? Are you wasting your money? Are you duplicating another service from another department? That goes to housing. What is it that's available? There's the loan system if you're a homeowner, a senior homeowner. But it's a loan system. If you've got a fixed income, where are you going to get the money from to pay it back? So then you have predatory lenders that prey on seniors, that prey on people who don't speak English, that are taking money out of the community and not putting it back. And then you have a demographic that only has businesses here, but they don't pay back. And so, there's just so many things. I want to change Mattapan Square so that it's a destination place. You've got tens of thousands of cars that come through here every day, but they come through here. And then you have a mayor policy that wants to put a bus line all the way up Blue Hill Avenue in the middle of Blue Hill Ave. Are you serious? No. And nobody who lives here wants that. Nobody. But you've got these out-of-town city planners that came up with this squares and streets thing. They came up with this bus lane at Blue Hill Avenue. Nobody wants it. So even if you thought it was a good idea, why would you shove it down people's throats? That's going to ruin businesses. There are businesses in Rosendale Square, which I think was like the test tube baby for the squares and streets thing, that are being ruined, that are moving out. This one particular business owner that I talked to yesterday, the Rosendale Business Group, when her building changed hands, she didn't own the building, and she's got a store there, a salon there. Her new owner went up on her rent 50%. Who are you? How can you do that and expect the businesses to stay there? Businesses that have been there, that the anchors of and the fabric of the community. So there's a way that we can, and I've got some ideas of how we can do that and how we can foster that. But you've also got to bring innovation, and that's where the young people come in. The young people with the ideas. We've got all these colleges and universities. Partner with them. Partner with MIT. Partner with Harvard. Partner with Northeastern. You're getting money and you're getting benefits. Let these benefits not just be scholarships for Boston High School students. Let it be the best brains coming in here and trying to figure this out. In exchange. So we're not paying you. You're already not paying us. Bring this in here and do that. Bring in the new technology. And then I also think that we need to look at some other countries. There's a reason other countries can compete with us academically. They're blowing us away. They're absolutely blowing us away. And Boston is the first public school started in Boston. Why are we arguing about 3 exam schools when all of the schools should be so excellent? We're not losing them to charter schools. And charter schools is another whole initiative that's draining money out of the Boston public school system. So
go to that piece about education, and you said about education. So there's the charter school, right? There's the trade school.
Absolutely.
There's the underperforming public schools, and then there's the school committee.
I believe in a totally elected school committee. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the arguments that I've heard, and I tell you why I believe that. I was part of the group that was behind the non-binding referendum at the last election, where 120,000 people voted for an elected school committee. More than voted for anybody, including the mayor. 120,000. If we're in a democracy, how do you ignore that? And if you believe in democracy enough so they put you in office, why don't you believe they're smart enough to be able to elect their own school committee? That's the first thing in democracy. One man, one woman, one vote. 18 and over, vote. We don't have poll taxes anymore, thank God. We don't have literacy tests anymore. That's what they did to black people. Voter suppression. And there's other stuff they do for voter suppression too. But I believe the school committee should be fully elected. There were about 9 or 10 of us the first year of Mayor Wu's term. And we finally got in there to meet with her. And we said, well, what are you going to do? This is what the people are saying. It's non-binding, but it's what the people are saying. And she said at that time, well, I'm thinking more in a hybrid, partly appointed, partly elected. And I said, okay, I can see an argument for that. But where in the United States, not Massachusetts, where in the United States of America has it been a successful hybrid school committee the size of the Boston School Committee? There is none. So if you're going to be the one that does it, then what does it look like and when are you going to do it? Crickets. And the last time, it was twice, there were 3 mayoral forums. She was asked, I think they were all asked, and she said no. She wants it all elected now.
Oh. Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Because it was like a lightning round, and the moderator said they had paddles, yes, no, kind of thing. Elected school committee versus appointed school committee. Do you agree in elected school committee? She went, no.
She said no.
She said no.
She does not support elected school committee.
She does not
She
support
maintains that.
She maintains it now. So she flip-flopped. Well, she was non-committal, and then she said hybrid, and then she went silent, and now she says no. And so the arguments I've heard were, well, remember, this was Pixie Palladino, Louise Day Hicks was really racist and stuff, right? And it was really crazy, and there was corruption, and people just used that as a stepping stone for other elected offices. These are the things that I've heard. So name me a position that wasn't a stepping stone, including city council. And you can use Ayanna Pressley as an example. She came into city council, now she's Congress. I mean, Marty Walsh, he was state rep, went to be the mayor, then he went to, the feds, right? And now he's head of hockey or something like that, whatever he's doing, right? That's the nature of politics, if you're going to be in it. And then so you get in it, and then you say, well, I can't do as much as I want to do, so let me get in there. So, Domingos DeRosa, he ran 3 times for at-large city councilor. Now he's running for mayor. And I asked him, because I was on his last campaign, I said, why don't you just go back for at-large city council? You've got name recognition, people know you, you'd probably get in there really easy. And he said to me, I realize the problems that I want to address because this is such a heavily mayor-led city. You have to be the mayor to do it. Boom, made sense to me. And then he got on the ballot. And he's not spending $2.5 million, $3 million for a job that pays $250,000. So you have to ask yourself, why you guys, at this point, both candidates that are being touted as being the likely people, based on the results from New York yesterday, that's not necessarily true because the underdog won as the Democratic nominee. So it's a David and Goliath story, but at the end of the story, David won. And so, Mayor Wu had $2.5 million in her coffers. Josh Kraft loaned himself $2 million. And then his father's friends are $1 million here, $1 million there. At the end of this campaign, they'll probably drop $10 million on just tearing each other apart. But $10 million, right now, we don't, as hot as it is, the pools in the city are not open. You could take that money and open up all the pools. What are people going to do? Yesterday, it was 105 degrees, and it felt like 112. I didn't say that. The Weather Channel said that. I was out there, and I felt it. But they had these little spray things, and Domingos and I went around to some of the spray. It's like, are you kidding me? A little spray thing up in here. That's not like a pool. The pools are dysfunctional. The pools are not open. There's a couple of pools in different places, but not in Roxbury, not in Dorchester. And then the ones that you have are limited hours. And it's one place. And who did you tell? And how did you tell them that that's the place that you can go? And then how are the kids going to get there? Kids from Roxbury are going to come all the way up to Mildred Avenue? If I'm a parent, no. You're not going up there without me when school is out and stuff is crazy. So, there's a serious problems with that, right? So that's in the educational piece. You only have 30% of high school graduates reading at grade level, 30%, and we're supposed to be the top educators. How does that work? And then DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, for the longest time, before COVID and even after and during COVID, had said that they were thinking about putting Boston Public Schools in receivership because they weren't addressing special education. They're still not doing it. They weren't addressing multilingual learners. They're still not doing it. So what are we saying we're doing? And there were $430 million of ESSER funds from the feds during COVID that was supposed to refit the buildings so that people wouldn't get sick. I mean, it was pretty basic because 60% of the Boston Public Schools buildings were built around World War II. So you go into these places and the cafeteria's in the basement, but I remember the basement was like a bomb shelter. It was like, you know, stop, drop, and roll for the atomic war kind of a thing. So you go into some of these basements that have been retrofitted and you can't get Wi-Fi because it was built as a bomb shelter. It's so retrofitting buildings, and now you have a superintendent. They're going to eliminate middle schools and just have people going from, and they're claiming that they want to stop the shuffle around between elementary, middle school, and high school. But I taught in elementary, middle school, and high school. Middle schoolers are not elementary students, and they're not yet high school students. There's a different maturity level. There's a different, and I say maturity in terms of mental, but also physical. I don't want someone who's going through hormonal changes and everything around elementary kids, because I don't know what that really means. And right now, our kids are maturing quicker because of all the chemicals in the food. At one point, young ladies were maturing and getting their menstruals 13, 14, 15. Now it's like 8, 9, and 10. The girls that I was in, you know, teaching in middle school, they looked like they already were married and had 3 kids already. And they're looking bigger, and the guys are looking bigger and hairy than me. And I'm like, 8th grade, what? And then again, mentally, they're not ready for high school. High school, you're supposed to be preparing them for being on their own and either going to college or trade school or getting a job and contributing to society as an adult. They're not there. And so you need to deal with them where they are. And for convenience sake, well, it's not just convenience sake, because there's less kids. People are having less children. And then the children that we are having are going to the charter schools because they don't believe. Now, there's some amazing public schools. But then there's also policies that have ruined some schools that were model schools. The Trotter at one point was a stellar school. There are a lot, Timilty, again, and we saw parents and students and teachers protesting keep those schools open. Then the school department, who was going through a revolving door of superintendents at one point, was making all these policies because people they've got a good idea. You know, you've got a transformational school, a transformative school, or a kaleidoscope school, all the different terms they come up with to put their name. You know, I did this. Come on, I came from Harvard, I came from here, and I've got this new theory about how to teach math, new theory about how to teach English. 30 years later, they go, no, that's not the right way. You ruined the whole couple of generations of kids because you don't know what you were doing. There are tried and true methods that teach kids how to be human beings and how to fill their full potential. And that's also biblical, right? Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they get old, they won't depart from it. Where did we lose that? Where did we lose that? We lost that because we made now. See, I'm seeing healing our land, and I'm in the church, so I got to go there, brother. We lost who we are. We lost who we listen to. We're listening to all these other voices, but the voice of God is clear, even if you're not saved. People sometimes say, something told me. Something told me not to go there. Something told me. I think one of God's names is something. Something told me not to do that. And then they find out. And so we've been taught to listen to so many other voices and give those voices credibility. And that's like worshiping idols, worshiping other gods. Because it feels good, because it looks good, because it sounds better. It's not easy being a Christian. Just because you're saved doesn't mean that everything's going to be, if anything, it's going to be worse. Because then you put the battle line. This is where I am. And when you're on the side of the enemy, he ain't worried about you. So he doesn't have to worry about you. He doesn't have to put all this opposition. As a matter of fact, he'd rather it feel good, look good, sound good, smell good, so you stay there and stay confused, right? And get distracted and get destroyed. Steal, kill, and destroy. That's what he does. But then it looks so tempting, just like the apple. We don't really know if that was a pomegranate, a peach, or a real apple. But she could touch it, but she got confused because she didn't really know the word. And because she didn't know the word, and Adam stepped out of his rightful position as the leader, because he could have stopped her. He knew. He heard it from God. So when he saw his helpmeet reach for that apple and then come to him, he had, because we always put it on Eve, but it's really Adam. Adam should have said, no, baby, that's not for us. Boom. We wouldn't be dealing with this. We'd all be living in paradise. But then, you know, such is life. But, you know, you have to, God has always loved us. He created us. He is love. And we take him for granted. because he lets us make our own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if somebody loves you unless it's tested. They can tell you that all day. They can send you flowers, cook your meal and everything. But when you don't have to love them and you're really pressed to really show what that is, because love is hard when somebody is not appreciating you, when somebody's not loving you, when somebody's not doing for you and you're still doing for them, woo-hoo-hoo, then how you feel. Tell me how you really feel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I do what I do because I love to do it.
Mm-hmm.
As we were building the website, they were asking me for pictures of me doing stuff. And it's like, I was just doing it. I wasn't stopping to take selfies saying, look what I'm doing. So I really had to search for it. Unless somebody else took a picture of me, I don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, you said you did this. You started Black Teachers Matter. I did. Fighting for Black teachers. Do I have pictures doing that? I don't know. You know, working on the school committee, and it was Zoom. I didn't take pictures of me being on Zoom doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've gone out there in the community, people are saying to me, I remember you. You always testifying for the school committee. You always fighting for the teachers. You always fighting for the students and the parents. You do this because God puts it in your heart, and God is a God of purpose. You fulfill your purpose, not fulfill a selfie. I'm not. Housing, yes, we have to build more. What do we do with the housing that we have now? Try to maintain it if it's good quality, because some of the buildings weren't up to code, so it could really be making you sick. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The building materials could be decomposing. It could be using fossil fuels where you have to change, like my house is over 100 years old. I had to change the heating system.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a coal bin in my basement. As a matter of fact, when the guys came to dismantle it, they said, can we take a picture of this? We always heard about this, but we never saw one. So I was like, oh, wow. So some of the places need to be retrofitted, and the funding needs to be there for that.
Mm-hmm.
For new housing, it needs to be, LEED, LEED, meaning that it has to be ecologically sound and friendly. You use new technology, maybe solar, maybe wind, renewable energy. The materials that you have are not poisoning the ground, not poisoning the earth. And then you have to be mindful of green space, because if you don't, where Black and brown people live, the ground has been poisoned, the air has been poisoned. We live near highways. You've got exhaust, and that's in the air. We're losing green space, which means the earth is hotter. You don't have the trees. We don't have older trees because that's being knocked down. And there's a different ecological impact when you have an older tree in terms of what it does to the soil and what it does to the air, filtering out the air. Water sources. I'm old enough to remember when plastic was invented. But I remember going to the butcher, going to the baker, and you could smell it around the corner. They were cooking it there. And then they tell you, well, that's day old, so it's cheaper than that. You knew the butcher. You're not looking through plastic and looking at a date to try to figure out, is it still red because they put dye in it, but it's really not healthy for me. And so Black and brown people, we don't want to be hungry. And the food that's in our communities is cheaper, but it's not good for you. So you're going to pay for it one way or the other. You're going to pay for it in the food that you put in your system, or you're going to pay for it for the medical attention and the procedures and the medicine that you have to take because you are filling your body with garbage. And in Mattapan, where are we going? You've got farmers markets when there's farmers markets, but where do we go on a regular basis to get healthy food that's affordable? That's a part of the mainstay of the neighborhood. We don't have it. There's a reason why. Because the medical industry makes more money from you being sick. So I'm going off, and you're just saying, but
I'm listening to what you're saying. So I'm hearing all of that, and so again, for addressing some of those things. So for instance, healthy food you talked about, like they had the daily table, right, which are now all
it's
shut
all
down.
closed, all shut
Right.
down.
So these were things that were intentionally being able to address the nutrition deserts in the inner city. So I know there's some concepts of urban gardening, right? I don't know if there's enough of those.
It's not.
I don't think so.
It's not.
So again, these are, how do we address these things? Or we understand some of the problems, but what would be some of the solutions should you become city council initiatives that you would propose and or that you've heard?
So I'm already working, and I've been on the Southwest Boston CDC, which is the only CDC that in Hyde Park, and it's Southwest Boston is Rosendale and Hyde Park, right? So I've been in there for 14 years building affordable housing. And that CDC built the 14 years ago, 15 years ago when I started, had built the first affordable housing in Hyde Park in 20 years. And so I've seen what you can do when you partnership with the city, and the city gives you certain stipulations so that certain percentages of the housing that you build is not market rent, that you set it aside for it to be affordable. And so you have these partnerships with the city so that the city, which is not a landlord, can actually partner with CDCs and not just developers that are for profit. But even with developers, you set aside a certain amount of the units for people who can afford it. Stabilize the community. I believe that the best way to stabilize is to have home ownership. So you look at these places, and one of the ideas that I had was to partner with people who maybe don't want to, they own their house, but they don't want to maintain their house. But they make an agreement for someone who is looking for a house that will stabilize the neighborhood and buy it and sell it to them. Either you keep it within their family, and it's younger people in their family, or you partner them with people who are planning on staying in the community, who want to stay in Boston, and you have special incentives for them to be able to buy the house. So the city may be able to put up a certain amount of money as a down payment for first-time home buyers, or they meet certain demographics, like they're a family. A lot of the housing that's built now is not built for families. It's one bedroom, or it's a studio. Right then, you're telling families you don't want them in Boston because all the housing that you're building is not for them. But we have certain cultures that have more than one kid. I mean, they do. So if you're not building housing for them, you're telling them that they can't be here, they can't afford here, they can't stay here. So the first thing I would look at is the part we know who is elder, and actually have an incentive program so that maybe you can give them an incentive for selling their house to a certain family. The house, the family stays there, but the elder who sells the house has the money that they need to be able to live out the rest of their life. Maybe it's a partnership where they say, well, you'll get this house and in 2 years or in 3 years. But this will be an agreement between us to be able to do this. I can stay in my house for this long. I get so much money, and then I can, there's a lot of different creative ways that you can do it, and you're stabilizing the community and you're building community at the same time. You give incentives to people to build within certain parameters and not change. Say if they buy, it's a developer, and they buy a certain land, they can't build something that's not the character of the community. So if you've got mostly triple deckers, then you don't build a 20-story building. Like, you can't do that. You change the whole neighborhood, and that goes with zoning and all this other stuff. But that's what's happening in Roslindale. That's what people are trying to do in an effort to have more housing. But you're building up like it's Chicago or it's New York. We're not Chicago. We're not New York. There's a way to better utilize the land that we do have that's abandoned, and not destroy the ecology, not destroy the flavor and the culture of Boston. People come to Boston because they don't want to be in New York. They don't want to be in Chicago. They don't want to live in a place like that. But what happens through gentrification is people, Piano Factory in the South End, that was supposed to be for all artists. And that had a certain flavor. When you have artists that move into an area that's dilapidated or something, they bring a certain flavor to it. But then you make it so expensive that artists can't stay there. That's what happened to Piano Factory. That's what happens to a lot. That's what's been happening to Roxbury. All of a sudden, the murals with Mandela on it are down, and you see this building. Or historic places are torn down because they don't have any ties to the community. So there should be more areas that actually maintain the character. The Harriet Tubman House that the community actually fought for, it had this beautiful mural on the side of it. All of a sudden, you have other people managing it that have no ties to the community, had no ties to the struggle. Now it's a high-priced condo, and there's no Harriet Tubman House. And so historically, we have places here that should maintain here, that shouldn't be moved someplace else. And there's different edicts that you can do. There's different zoning that you can do. There's different certifications that you can do. Say it's historic and you can't touch it. Most people don't know how many black churches in the neighborhood were actually part of the Underground Railroad. That's got historic significance. And then when you have that, there's certain federal monies that come there, certain protections that come there that can maintain that. So there's, city council, you can do that. You can bring that about. And then you work with even though you're district counselor, you've got to work with, 12 other people to get them. So you have to be aware not of just your district, but how we fit into the rest of the fabric of the city. Because you're going to be voting on other things more than just your district. It's just that you're the voice of that particular district.
Mm-hmm. Mass and cast.
Oh.
Yeah. So what's the solution?
You know, my good dear friend Domingos DeRosa, I love that brother. And he was fighting this and dealing with this for 10 years. Mm-hmm. He was the reason why this became an issue. Mm-hmm. And I watched him way before I had anything to do with his campaign or anything, taking coats down there, bringing sandwiches down there, advocating down there. He was one of the co-founders of the South End Roxbury coalition that brought attention to there while they were helping people. I literally was on the phone talking to him while he was down at South Bay, talking a police officer through how to administer Narcan to save somebody's life. I heard that on the phone. Mm-hmm. When he and I were out there gathering signatures, and South Bay is one of his strong points, and we had been out there since like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning getting signatures. So about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, actually, it was right before 3 o'clock because Ideal closed at 3. That's his favorite sandwich stop. So we went and got some sandwiches. We're in the car going to South Bay. So he and I were out there from 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. It's like 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night every day. And because you only have 20 days. Doesn't matter if you're going for mayor and you need 3,000 signatures, or at large city council, you need 1,500 signatures, or district, you need 200, right? And so we went out there, and we're driving to find a parking spot in South Bay, and this homeless guy that he knew him by name, he just gave him a sandwich. I knew we hadn't eaten all day, and I watched him give him a sandwich. I was like, dude. And I remember when he and Carlos Enriquez, and I forget who the other was, but there were 3 of them. He got his people together and started showing these bags of needles because he was coach of the Boston Bengals, and they were using Clifford Park. So every day they had to go out there and clear the park of human feces, of humans doing other things, while these kids are there, because he's caring for the kids. Bags of needles. And so he went to Marty Walsh at the time. He's like, look, this is a city issue. It's a city park. What's going on? We have to do this every time. I don't want my kids to get hurt. Mass and cast. I saw him when he went live, and he got a group of people to shut down, literally sitting in the middle, which is gutsy in and of itself. Mass Avenue, Melania Cass Boulevard, and the Expressway. They were right there, and they shut it down. I watched him do that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's still an issue because people don't have the will to help these people that they're looking at as less than people. It really comes down to that. Mm-hmm. How do you spend $100 million, take $100 million of taxpayers' money, and why don't you use ferries to put people? If you can't use the bridge because Quincy's giving you a hard time, then use something else. Mm-hmm. Use a ferry. First off, they don't need to be anyplace else. Put them on an island. Get them off of Mass and Cass. You've got facilities and buildings up there. Spend the money for the facilities and spend the money for the health professionals, because the reason why they're coming down to Mass and Cass is you get the hospitals. I mean, if you have a drug overdose, a car accident, a shooting, a stabbing, you go to Boston Medical Center. That's the best place to go. Trauma. Mm-hmm. They know how to do that. Mm-hmm. And all the, the Boston Public Health Commission, all that stuff is right down there. It makes sense that people from across the state are coming there because that's where the facilities are. So one of the things is the federal and it's a state thing. These services that are down at Mass and Cass need to be in the places where these people are coming from. Then they wouldn't come there. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. The second thing, the people that are from there need to be someplace else that they can get everything they need. But public safety-wise, they're ruining the businesses down there. They're ruining the quality of life of people who own property down there. You can't even go into South Stop and Shop and Dunkin' Donuts and Stop and Shop in South Bay anymore and sit down and have a cup of coffee. They got rid of all the tables and chairs and stuff because they were nodding out. I would go down there and shop. That was my favorite place. But I'm in the bathroom and then somebody's, dosing up or overdosing next to me. And then you go in there now and there's certain places they've got all blocked off that you can't get into. I mean, it's crazy. And so you've got to maintain the business district down there, because that's the vibrancy of that area, right? you've got to maintain and not overload the medical services down there. So you disperse it to other places. Then the ones that are there, you give them what they need in an environment that's controlled so that you don't have the drug dealing because they're removed from the drug dealers. You don't have all the prostitution because you've got security maintaining that. And you don't let them stay there. The wintertime, Mayor Wu did this big thing about, she's going to take the backloaders and get rid of the tents. Most people don't know there were 2 dead bodies in those tents. There's been an incredible crime in those tents. If there were all black people down there, which there weren't, they'd be in jail. We know that there's a double standard between black and brown people and how they police and survey and the consequences. You know it, I know it. We know enough people that are in prison. There are still people in prison now, even though marijuana has been decriminalized, who are still in there from drug charges, and they're selling it out in the open. So there's a couple of different institutions and policies that need to be aligned and need to be addressed immediately. The people that are incarcerated, most of them are going to get out. But what are you doing with them while they're in there? At one point, you can go to college, you can get a college degree for free. That's not really happening the way it is. The other thing is, they're kicked out and you may have temporary housing, but because of the housing shortage and because of the way we view people who get locked up because they've done something wrong, and the disparate sentences that these people get for the stuff that they've done, society overall needs to look at people differently. This could be your brother, it could be you. Let
me go there real quick because we only got 3 minutes and we have to have you come back.
3 minutes.
Can you believe it? So with regard to those who are incarcerated, one, as you know, we go behind the wall and do a lot of civic engagement.
Yes.
One, will you be willing to come with us behind the wall, unit to unit, to engage our returning citizens?
Let me tell you something about that. That is such a sore spot for me, and I tell you why. My father was incarcerated when I was 2 years old. He came out when I was 8. My uncles, family members of mine, I've worked with JRI, with the young girls that were there every Wednesday. It's kind of a trigger. I mean, yes, I'm willing to go. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. But it's kind of, it's not just me going there and having a visit. For me, it's deep soul work.
Yeah. Well, and with that said, so the Office of Returning Citizens, right, is another entity that has one returning citizen. The model is it should be run by a returning citizen. My challenge is to every candidate, including the mayor, is for the mayor's Office of Returning Citizens to be fully staffed.
That's right.
By returning citizens.
I don't know about fully staffed. I think you need a mix of both.
Okay.
People that could have been in there and didn't get in there, that avoided it.
Okay.
And people that did get in there and got out, and people who are still in there. It needs to be a collaboration.
Well, certainly, again, the model is that it should be run by a returned citizen. That's the model in D.C., right? Because you have an empathy and a passion and a compassion for a particular population. And so minimally, if it's not, run by a returned citizen, and certainly returned citizens should not be one returned citizen on the entire staff.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy.
Out of all the people who work for the Office of Returning Citizens, who's
crazy.
Not the executive director.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And if you remember, I know you do, First Incorporated.
Yes.
Right? And so